Hello, in this short video tutorial, I would cover about the Graduate Management Admission Test, shortly the GMAT, and the books that are required to prepare for the test, some of the strategies, a sample study plan, and where you could find some practice tests to help prepare for the exam. I did this tutorial for two reasons. One, when I was preparing for my GMAT, I did not know of some of the material until I was way into my preparation. So I wasted a lot of time reading the wrong books and hoping that it would boost my score. Secondly, when I started searching for the right kind of material online, I came across several blogs and websites that each listed their own set of materials. Everybody would recommend their own collection of books, so I did not know which one is the right one to buy. So in this video tutorial, I'd show the minimum number of books that are required to get a decent score on the GMAT. So first and foremost, everyone who has started preparing or who is preparing for the GMAT should have the official guide, the latest edition of the official guide. This is the book that is published by the folks who administer the GMAT, and you could buy this from mba.com or Amazon, or you could find at other websites too. It has all the problems that have appeared previously on the GMAT, and don't be fooled that you would not see questions that have appeared last year or last January, but you'd see questions that have appeared way ago. But definitely it will give you what kind of questions you could expect to see on the GMAT and the level of difficulty. And one thing folks who use the OG should be aware of is it does not present you the very tough or challenging question that one would see while doing when he is doing well on the test, on the day of the test. Because if a person, let's say his final score is 720, or when he's doing very well on the test, he would see challenging questions that are not present in this official guide. The official guide has all the questions that are of medium difficulty, so one should be aware. So if one wants to have a chance to practice some of the challenging questions, they should look beyond the official guide. Second, for the sentence correction part of the verbal section, one could use the Manhattan GMAT sentence correction book. This book is very useful. It lists all the principles that are tested in the sentence correction part. It goes through subject and verb agreement. It goes through pronouns, nouns, how to use them, and so it's a definitely good book. And you could rely just on this one book to have to cover sentence correction. If you are still not able to cope up with, then you could look for other books. But definitely this book should be enough for scoring well on sentence correction. Next, for critical reasoning, there is a book by PowerScore, and it is considered to be the Bible. And as far as I am concerned, it is the only book that covers critical reasoning thoroughly. It discusses all the different types of problems that one would see on the GMAT. And also they present some tips as to how to identify a question or a pattern based on a pattern, and also they present how to tackle that question, how to answer this question. Finally, there is this analytical writing assessment section. When you take the test, you would see this section first. That means you are asked to answer 2 essay questions, and you'd have 30 minutes for each section. And I'll discuss more on this later on in the presentation. And you could consider some additional material depending on your strengths or weaknesses. If suppose, let's say you're struggling on a certain section of the math, let's say you have a problem with word problems, you're solving word problems, or you are making some basic mistakes on number properties, you could consider buying one of the Manhattan one of their math series books. They have a pretty good series. They have around 7 or 8 books covering the entire GMAT. And the other one, if you are looking to practice some challenging problems, you could buy this GMAT 800 by Kaplan. It definitely has some of the very difficult problems. Be aware, you wouldn't see this level of difficulty on the actual GMAT, but it definitely familiarizes you with some of the toughest questions. So how this would be helpful is, let's say you're doing very well and you want to score above 700. You'd really see some tricky, tough problems, and by doing this book, you'll not panic when you see such a question for sure. And then it also maybe you could see a similar problem on the exam too. So for those who are aiming high, this book is helpful. The math section on the GMAT presents you with 37 questions, and you have 75 minutes to finish this section. That is, approximately you have 2 minutes to solve each question. That means you have to be fast. And when you see a question on the screen, you should be able to identify how to attack the problem. Means what are the initial few steps that you have to do to solve the problem. That means you have to know, you should have solved in your preparation such kind of a problem. If you are looking at that particular question for the first time, then most likely you will not be able to finish that question, answer that question in the 2 minutes allotted time. So how to avoid this error is by practicing a lot of problems, by looking at different types of questions and practicing and getting familiar with all the types that are possibly tested on the GMAT. Next, before you start doing the official guide math problems, first you should go through all their formula. This formula is presented at the beginning of the math section. They are basic formulae. You should definitely be familiar with them. And the book has around 250 problem solving questions and 150 data sufficiency questions. And as you go along the problem set, the difficulty level increases. That means the questions that are from 1 to 50 are easier than questions that appear between 50 and 100. So the last 50 questions in each section, in each problem set, are the most difficult, are a little challenging, and you should definitely consider redoing them before the exam. For sentence correction, as I've told you before, you should pick up the Manhattan GMAT sentence correction book. And if you are a non-native speaker, you should definitely consider reading the idiom list that is given at the back of the book. It is very, very useful because sometimes if you are not doing so well, if you have answered 2 questions wrong on the GMAT and you see a very simple sentence correction question that uses one of the idiom principle, knowing the idiom or knowing what the phrase looks or what the phrase usage is will definitely be helpful, because you will be able to answer the question very quickly, and you could save some time for other questions. So I definitely recommending going through all the idioms. Then you should do the sentence correction book chapter by chapter. At the end of each chapter, it lists the problems in the OG based on the principles discussed in the chapter. That means, let's say you did a subject-verb agreement chapter, and then at the end of that chapter, you would see a list of questions in the OG from the OG that use this principle. So it is a must-do. Following this way will be very helpful, because you just learned about a new principle, and then you would see how it is applied to the real test questions. If you don't follow this, the disadvantage to not following this methodology is you'd learn all the principles at one shot, at one go, and not practice any real questions. Then at the end of the book, then after finishing the book, then you'd go to the official guide questions, and let's say you are not able to use one principle properly, or you're still not scoring highly, and later on you make a decision to redoing the OG, but this time you would have almost known all the answers to the question. You would have some questions just stay in your memory, so without even looking at the choices, you know what the answer is. So basically you will exhaust all the questions, and then you will not find a good material to practice on later on in your preparation. So it is very important to follow a certain methodologies. I'll discuss more about study methodology later on in the presentation, but adhere to one study strategy. Don't haphazardly do the material. Use your material wisely, because once you end up using all the good material,